don't y'all start back from like when your mother died? What happened? Did y'all stay on the farm for a while?
Yeah, we stayed,
John
she died
cooked.
in June, and we stayed until September. And the boys did all of the ironing, the cooking.
John did
And
the cooking.
James and Johnny put up tomatoes, and they all spoiled.
Oh.
And so that's what I said, Frank was about 2.5, and we had a little old cart with wheels on it, and Dorothy and I had put him in that cart, and we'd wheel him across those, you know, they had those boards then in the old houses, farmhouses, between the rooms, and every time we'd hit one of those, he'd hit his head, and he'd holler, "Wah!"
What was that?
That's what happened
That's
to you,
what's wrong
Frank.
with it.
Yeah.
And we'd laugh.
Whose head were you hitting?
Frank.
Mine.
Oh.
Pulling me in that dang little old car across the threshold.
Okay, so
between one room
September
and the other.
came and y'all decided y'all couldn't do this anymore, huh?
Well,
Oh,
the boys, you know, they were in the high school, and they were gonna have to go back to school, and so 5 of us, the 5 youngest, went to live with Grandma and Grandpa, and then they went to different relatives there in Muldoon. You stayed with Royce and Charlie some, didn't you?
4 years.
Yeah, but before
and,
that, still at the farm.
And James and John stayed with different ones, but they all finished high school.
This was before, while we were still at the farm. Raymond and I went down after dark. We had to slop the pigs because nobody else had done it. So we go down there, and man, I'm holding on to him, and he's got scared too, and all of a sudden we hear this, oh, you know, that was a weird noise. And I said, what is it? He said, I don't know, man, we're holding on to each other, you know. That slop is going everywhere because we're shaking and scared. And finally we hear them go, oh. And finally, old John got so tickled, he nearly fell out the top story.
It was John?
Yeah, he was up on the top story. He almost fell to the ground laughing.
Now, did y'all all go to the same high school? In
Yeah, at Flatonia.
Flatonia?
I went 1 year there, and then I finished in Columbus. And
Okay.
then Frank finished in Columbus. You went
Okay.
2 years.
Yeah,
didn't you?
2 years, junior and senior year
Lived
in
with
Columbus.
Don't ask me how many I went to.
But we were all separated after 5 years after Grandpa died, because Grandma had to break up housekeeping, and then we all went to different places to live.
Well, Frank was around quite a bit. He come to California.
Yeah, he stayed out there.
We picked you up from Grandpa Richardson's. Me and Raymond did, and taking you to California.
Yeah, I went to live my sophomore year with John and Angie.
Yeah.
Well, you stayed with me, what, about 2 years, wasn't it?
No,
Well, you went to that school.
No, I didn't stay with you any time at all. The only one in California was John and Angie when I was a sophomore in high school. Went to Alameda High School. Grace spent a lot of time with you.
Well,
there.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I put Grace through high school. She hadn't even graduated.
Frank said he didn't have anything happen to him. Raymond used to put the boxing gloves on he and Grace and make them box. Those little old kids was out there. He wouldn't let them stop for 20, 30 minutes at a time. And I mean, they were just beating the tar out of each
Okay, so
other.
how many
I feel
times did
sorry
Grace
for
kick your
him.
butt?
I really
I
feel
won.
sorry for
I
those
won.
2 kids.
Well, who did Daddy James stay with when y'all split up?
Who was he with?
He was at
Who?
Gun Charlie's.
John?
James.
James.
Stayed with, James stayed with Uncle Warren and Lucy.
Yeah, that's right, he stayed out there.
And
John was
John-
out there.
John
No.
stayed with Uncle Will and
Yeah,
Mary.
John was
Yeah.
in town.
And I stayed with Cousin Charlie and Cousin Lois.
Well, I know John was at
Me and John used to help Uncle Will work cattle all the time.
well,
And then y'all stayed there till you left to go to service, or CCC
I
or whatever?
joined the CCCs and sent money to Grandma and Grandpa to support all you kids.
Wow.
Now, Uncle Will, was that Will Reitmer?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I remember Uncle Will.
Uncle Will and Aunt Mary.
Mm-hmm.
well, I know that John helped out at Uncle Oil's because he was the type that could sleepwalk, and Uncle Oil said that he, you know, had the news and he was plowing while he was up on the dresser. Whoa there, Kate! Up there, boy! And Uncle Oil had to go in and get him off the dresser. He was sound asleep in it, plowing that field.
The night Grandpa died, I ran all the way down to Aunt Mary's and Uncle Will's. Told them something happened to Grandpa, y'all better come up here. And that's when he wasn't supposed to smoke, and he started across the room to get a match out of that, you know, up
Yeah.
above there,
Yeah,
they
he
always
helped.
kept those matches,
Mhm.
and he
Remember that.
fell right in the middle of the floor. And he never did live, I mean, he
Well, I
was
thought you
fine,
ran
he-
for Conrad first.
No, I ran all the way up to St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one on Grandpa Speed. It was wintertime. We were sitting in the living room, of course, his bedroom, and Grandma's was in the living room area there. And we were sitting down beside the stove, and we hear the cat meow at the back door, and Grandpa says, "There's old Tom." And that cat had been gone 2 years. It came in, and it got right at Grandpa's feet. When Grandpa went to bed, it laid down at the end of the bed like it had for years. But that doggone cat came back, and it was all scratched up and scarred up and everything else. But Grandpa, when that cat meowed at the back door, says, "There's old Tom." And I remember that to this day. It said, "There's old
Wow.
Tom."
Well, did you know we had a big old white cat and you always called him Nigger? That cat
Well,
was
this,
so white.
Old Tom was, white cat and such, and that's one that would go up to Cousin Charlie's. Cousin Charlie had that English bulldog and another dog up there. And about once a month, Old Tom would go up to Cousin Charlie's place, and he'd fight that doggone English bulldog, and I mean, fur would be flying everywhere, and Harold and I would get up in the tree to watch this, because it'd be around the yard and under the house and everywhere else on it. And that doggone cat, after about 5 minutes or 7 or 8 minutes or such on it, he'd kind of put his chest out and walk off. But about once a month, that dang cat would come up there and fight that bulldog.
That's unusual.
Well, tell us about your mother. What was she like?
Frank
I probably
doesn't-
know her least
doesn't
than any of
remember.
her.
I remember a couple of incidents, with
Arthur
her.
would be the one that would remember the most about her.
Well, I remember when you and I had scarlet fever, and man, that we had that fireplace.
I had
And-
scarlet fever and everybody else had to be quarantined.
Well, you and I both had it, and I'm just burning up, and I'd say, "Oh, please turn that fire off, put that fire out." And it was cold, it was wintertime, and she'd bathe our face, with the wet washcloths, but that was the worst thing in the world. It's just when you just burn up your whole body and your face and everything.
Mm.
But she was, she'd tell us and pet us, "Hey, it'll be all right, it'll be all right."
Well, when they lived in Pampa, which I was born there, I don't know anything about it, but heard the boys talk about it, that she'd whip some of them, for not minding, and had a big old German shepherd dog, and he'd rise up and put his hand, his paws on her, and that, she'd have to take him in the house and lock the door and whip the kids.
There's one instance that saved me there when we lived there. I would climbed up and went up on top of the windmill, was standing there, and the wind come along, and the wheel flew around, just about knocked me off the platform. James grabbed the handle and pulled it down and stopped it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here today.
How about when you saw that rattlesnake sitting on top of James's chest?
What?
That was in Coleman, Texas, where we was picking cotton. When we come down from Pampa off of the Cap Rock, and we was all sleeping in tents on pallets, picking cotton. Daddy would get 500 pounds a day, Mother 400. I had to get 300. James had to get 200, and John got 100. If we didn't, we got a switch.
And where was Frank? He wasn't here
He wasn't
yet?
born.
Well,
I was
around
born
here.
in
Wouldn't have
Pampa.
to.
No.
So the year span, you were born in what year? Art
16.
1916, and Dad, you were born in what?
1932.
32. Okay.
Well, there's 16 years difference.
Yeah.
So what was the deal about the rattlesnake on John's chest?
Oh,
Oh,
well,
James.
James's chest.
well, when he woke up, the snake was there on his chest, and just lucky, he threw him like that, and he didn't get hit, didn't get bit.
Wow.
The snake was nice and warm there, we was all covered up with pellets.
Snake was nice and warm.
They're all in the sack with him, huh?
Yeah. Oh, we're just laying on top of all of us laying there. Me, James, and John.
So your mother made you mind, huh? She was a,
Huh?
your mother made y'all mind, huh? She was a disciplinarian.
Well, we usually mind pretty good. I mind the daddy better than any of them, because he only whipped me once, and I never gave him
You
a
didn't
chance to whip
forget
me
it.
the second time.
He used that whip.
Well, now she could sing and play the piano and what else? She was talented.
She played the organ, we had an organ.
She
And they used to have what you call play parties.
House parties.
Yeah, and where they would go around in a circle, you remember that? We'd move all the furniture out of that one
Oh,
room.
yeah, I remember.
And, or somebody with a violin would come over, one of the neighbors, and mother would play the organ, and then couples would just go around and around.
The National boys would come over, they played the accordion, and everybody had a big time.
Our wife said, Lucille said that she always loved to go to Cousin Laura's, because they always had such a great time going there.
Oh, she was a wonderful cook. I mean, she just would make more cakes and pies for that. I guess they made Kool-Aid or something back, I know they used Kool-Aid back then.
Well, what would happen on Sunday most of the time, a lot of these boys in town, like Muldoon, would come out and play baseball with us. We made an old ball out of a sock and had a
Why?
cedar bat, and mother would cook up cakes and fried chicken and stuff. And back in them days in town, them little boys didn't have much to eat. And they would be glad to come out to our place every Sunday out there at Grandpa's.
Talk about Grandpa Speed used to play the violin all the time.
Oh,
he played.
And he and a guy named Scott, black guy there in Muldoon, one year Grandpa Speed would win the championship, and next year Scott would win the championship on it. And I remember listening to them over the tent there in Muldoon, 2 or 3 different years when I was in that area.
Where was I? I must have been shipped off to Azores.
I don't know, that's when I was in the
No,
first
Grandpa
and second
played a
grade.
lot when we were living there.
I know, but not
Well,
with no
when
black
you-
guy that I ever knew.
When we lived on the farm, Mr. Willis Jones, you remember them?
Yeah,
But you
I
got
remember
different
them.
notes.
They would come over, he was a big fiddler, and Grandpa played the fiddle.
Yeah.
And
Why don't you go over and
they
get on the
really had a
couch?
ball with it. And
Go get on the
everybody would
couch.
be singing and dancing
Look.
around.
So did any of y'all play
Uh,
any instruments? Did any of y'all ever play any
Oh,
instruments?
yeah, yeah, she got lessons from Maybeth, the grandma and grandpa gave her, well, Maybeth gave them free, but she played the piano. And,
Do you still play at all? You don't?
Well, who was the mean with the bunch? The practical joker and you teased who most?
We were walking home from school one time.
Not me.
Across the branch, and after we got across the branch, Dorothy said, "Oh, I gotta go wee wee. Can you wait just a minute?" And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. But she didn't come, and she didn't come. So I went home and told Mother. I said, "Well, I can't find Dorothy." I said she had told me she had to go to the bathroom, and she was gonna be right back. And she never did come back, and she was in the back room just dying laughing.
Now, that was mean.
Oh, yeah.
That was nothing, huh?
Well, I want to ask one other sad question. When your father left, did y'all know he was leaving? Did he say bye, or he did? He
Yeah.
gathered y'all around, and what did he say?
Well, he told us he couldn't make a living there in Muldoon. He was staying at Grandma and Grandpa Richardson, and said there wasn't any work there for him. And he was going up north to get some work, so that he could send some money back.
But he never did send any money
No, I
back.
don't think he did either, but that was what.
And he used to take the boys' money when they were working until James. I think he's the one that told him, "Old man, you've taken my last dollar. You're not getting another cent."
Well, he taking all my money when I was working in the rock quarry, and Cousin Lois and Cousin Charlie just raised Cain about it.
Yeah.
He'd go to, Mr. Kerr was the paymaster.
Yeah.
And he'd draw my money, and Cousin Lois and Cousin Charlie, they didn't like that a bit.
Of course, you know, sometimes the old timers, they didn't think anything of that. That's the way it was.
Mhm.
But James finally, I remember him telling that
Mark.
just before he died. He said, "Yeah, finally told him, you've taken my last loan, you're not getting
Well,
another
he's
one.
also the one that stopped him from using the whip. He was using, they'd go to the Oak Quinn to go dancing, and he'd tell them to be at a certain time because they had to work the fields. And, oh man, Daddy had that whip, and he was just getting after old John, and I don't know, maybe Arthur too, but James took that whip and took it away from him. He said, "This is the last time you're gonna whip any of us with this thing." I think he broke it. I don't remember, but he took it away from him.
Oh,
So
good.
then y'all really thought he was just going away to make things better, so you weren't really heartbroken then
No.
when
Well,
that.
when I was playing football, we'd have to come home at night, and we'd have to work in the field if it was moonlight till 11 or 12 o'clock, so I could go to school the next day and play football.
Oh, boy.
They didn't want me playing football.
Well, now somebody said that he actually fell off of a truck or a trailer and
Yeah.
hit his head and.
Fell off of a cotton, Uncle Will was driving the cotton, and he said, "Look out, there's a wire." Well, if he hadn't said anything, Daddy was back there lying flat. He'd been okay, but he raised up, and the wire caught him and drew him backwards and hit the back of the concrete on the highway. And then he wasn't himself for several months.
Well, Aunt Marilyn said he never was right after that.
Yeah.
And I remember I was so scared of him, you know, it'd be really funny, he'd push Mother around while the boys protected her, but anyway, I thought he went outside, and so I sat on the bed there, and he was underneath the bed, and he reached out and pinched me on the toe, and I threw up on it. I was so scared.
Well, I forgot, what did your mother die from?
Actually, what happened was the tumor, and so they operated on her, and then that was it, she just started swelling until she burst.
So she actually was pregnant.
Well, I was told that the doctor left an instrument.
Yeah,
so
that's what I've always been told. That's what Aunt Mary told me.
Now, Aunt
developed
Zora's the
an
one that
infection.
knew all about it.
And I remember,
And the
she
doctor
was at the
was
hospital,
drunk.
and I went down there, and I was out, there's a swing on the porch area, and I remember out there swinging and such. And of course, I was, 3 years old? or
Well, she
such.
got blood poisoning from that instrument. That's what Aunt Mary knows
What was
well.
the surgery for then?
Well, he thought she had a tumor. He was operating on her for a tumor.
She's actually.
No,
But
he
she
didn't leave
called,
anything in there, 'cause she
she
wasn't that far
told Aunt
along.
Mary to bring all the kids down there that she
We
wanted
were
to
at
see
Charlie's
us.
birthday party, June
And
the
so-
6th, and they came and got us
Uncle
and took
Will
us
and
all
Aunt
to the
Mary
hospital.
took us all down there, and I wasn't but 9 years old, and they always called me sister, and when I went over, she said, "I want all of you to tell me goodbye," and when I walked over, she said, "Sister, be good and take care of the little ones."
She told us all to be good and to mind Grandma
So
and
she
Grandpa.
knew she was not gonna make it.
And that
Well, she
afternoon,
was
she
swollen
did.
up, they even had to bind her to keep her from popping open.
Mm.
But Aunt Mary said it was the instrument that was left
Yeah.
in there, and she got blood poisoning from
Yeah,
it.
that's what I've been told over the years, too.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
Aunt
Good
Zora
grief,
was
after having
there.
all these babies, why would they think she had a tumor and was just not pregnant?
Well, I don't know, I guess, I don't know why that happened.
Because he was drunk, they said.
The doctor?
I said nowadays they'd have been sued from one end to the other,
Oh,
but
yeah.
back there
back then
then,
they didn't.
Doctors were involved.
the doctor get there, but he was
37 years old.
an alcoholic, I've heard later.
Aunt Zora told me, because Aunt Zora was right there, she, you know, we lived right across from the hospital, and she was there all the time.
Now Zora was related to your mother, right?
Sisters.
They were sisters. Okay.
She was the youngest one in the family. And she used to come to our house when we lived with Grandma and Grandpa every 2 weeks. Gus and little Zora, Aunt Zora and Uncle Gus. And Dorothy and I, they ate all the chicken. We had fried chicken every 2 weeks. And so
Every week, every Sunday evening they came after church.
so we got what was left, so that's why I learned to like chicken wings and chicken feet. That's all that was left.
Yeah, kids now they let them eat first.
I
Back then
know.
we had to eat last.
So how many brothers and sisters did Laura have?
She had 2 brothers,
What were their names?
Uncle
Oral,
Oral and Yorla.
Okay.
5 girls and 2 brothers.
5 girls. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aunt Mary, Aunt Minnie, Aunt Jenny,
Well, that was
Mother, and Aunt
Uncle
Zora.
Garland's son that did the prayers today.
Okay. And then,
He
I
was
mean,
a
we've got
Baptist
some
preacher
really
at one
good
time.
heritage on the Speed side, but we've never really gone back and found the Campbell side. Where was your father born? Was he born in the Muldoon area, or, you know?
Alan told me he was born in Missouri.
Really?
Yeah.
And he had, only had one brother, and he had a bakery up in Ohio, wasn't it, or somewhere
Yeah,
around the
somewhere.
state, and
Through there.
caught on fire, and he burned up in the.
Well, they
Do you know what
said
his brother's
that,
name was?
That, it
Ray,
was,
I think.
he was
Ray?
killed, that, his wife had a lover or something anyway, that there was an explosion at the bakery, and they said it was done because she was in love with another guy. That's
Hmm.
what I heard.
It's probably where Raymond got his name.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we're supposed to have a half brother and a half sister.
Not a half sister, but a half brother. They came to my house when he was 6 years old.
Talking about Bobby.
Yeah, that was before Carol was born, so he would be, Carol was born that year, so he would be about 57 years old now. And his name was,
Bobby.
yeah, Bobby, or Robert.
Yeah.
Well, the last information I had on them, that they had moved to Georgia.
No, he died in Ohio. Oh, you mean after Daddy died?
I'm talking about.
Ruth and Bobby.
Bobby.
And Jenny.
Yeah, that's what Ray told me. Ray attended the funeral.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, John and Ray went.
yeah.
And I went.
Oh,
Right.
you went too? That's when you almost had a wreck, didn't you?
3 of them on that trip.
Mm.
I was in the hospital, I couldn't go.
I couldn't go because I was pregnant.
So you went to your daddy's funeral?
Yep.
What do you look like?
Same.
Yeah, just the same as I remembered him from the years past and such on it, and always was pretty haggard as far as cheeks were concerned, and he always wore a hat, didn't wear a cap, he always wore a hat.
And what did he die from?
Heart attack,
how old
No,
was
he
he?
had a stroke,
yeah, it's
and then
stroke.
it didn't come out of the
Well, they
colon
said
at
what
all.
they put in there is hardening of the arteries.
And
How old was he?
Yeah.
57,
Ooh, young.
I didn't know you attended the funeral.
yeah, I just got back from overseas, and,
Ray's the only one that told me.
was at Hamilton Air Force Base, and, went over and, picked up John, and was driving the 50 Mercury.
Who, Ray?
No, me, the one I bought from you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How come you such a dangerous driver?
Well, I tell you, it was, we
Probably
were
hit the
just
snow.
leaving Oakland in the hills, and a car cut the corner on one of the curves coming around one of the, mountains, if you will, or hills there. And, I mean, I squeezed between the car and the rock wall over there, and, just, couldn't have missed it over an inch on each side and such on it. And then John and I were driving, and I was out driving in Utah, and was going up a long hill, and it was getting dark, just sunset on thing, and there was a big semi-truck coming down the hill. We're going up on it, and a car pulls out around the semi, and I'm going about 80 on it. as we
Yeah,
were
because
trying to get
y'all
up
didn't
there.
have much time to get there.
Yeah, and what happened was I pulled the wheel to one side, hit the brakes, pulled it right back on it, and I slid into an entrance going to a cornfield, and then came right back on the highway as the car passed us on the thing.
The Lord had
And I
everything
got
on
out,
him.
and, I shook about 30 minutes, and John did too. As far as, just literally shaking on the thing.
You can imagine.
And to this day, that car just slid over, gave it the gas, came right back on, the other car in the truck came right past it and such on the thing. And it was going probably 80 or 90 miles an hour on the car. And we came, that close to being head-on about that thing.
Where are you guys going?
Going to Dad's funeral up in Bradford, Ohio.
Oh, you were going,
Yeah.
you say John was with you?
Yep.
I didn't know John was with you.
It would be interesting to try to locate that, Bobby,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd like to locate Charlotte, Grace's little girl.
Surely,
But we
Deb,
were,
did you, I gave you his,
yeah.
deal. You can't find anything on the internet. He was a policeman too.
But we were driving John was driving that night, probably, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And we go off of the end of the pavement. It's about a 18 to 24 inch drop. And, John's driving probably 60, I guess, at that point on the thing. And we sail off of that, and there's no barricade there or anything else on it. And by the time we got stopped, there was a barricade, but it was past where the drop-off was. And we did, I mean, we both clobbered heads on top of, you know, the roof of the car and everything else. And John's riding the brakes and such, trying to get it stopped, you know. And we're swerving down like that because now we're on gravel instead of paved road. And John says, "I'm not driving anymore." But I think he was shaking as much as I was back in Utah, you know.
Yeah.
But we did, we
That was a
sailed.
long drive.
We sailed out across that area and there wasn't a barricade there and such on it. And we had to come back around and get back up on the road and go back, oh, it was probably 2 miles and took, you know, another road. And we saw the sign when we got back there. It said detour on the thing. But it's just a little bitty sign that said detour. And there's no barricades until after we run off of that son of a gun.
We could turn the car up.
Oh, yeah, I figured we were right there, you know, I figured, I got 4 flats, you know, is what I was thinking.
Yeah, long
When
drive.
when we hit, and I'm hitting the top of the ceiling and everything, roof of the car, I just knew we had 4 flats, you know, the thing, blew all 4 tires off. Didn't do it.
I'll have to tell you one about Ray. He's the worst driver I ever saw.
Well, that's because he's always drunk.
We're going to Texas, and we're going down the freeway about 1 o'clock at night, and Ray messed that car head on by a half inch. Boy, I said, pull over and park that thing, let me drive. He couldn't see too good anyway. And we got to Valmarais, we were staying with some friends, and he got mad about something. He got up, walked, it was a little ways out of Valmarais, about 4 miles. He walked into Valmarais, and Ray had all the money, and I had the car. And I woke up the next morning, and I said, Jesus, how am I gonna get to Muldoon? And so, well, I got in the car, I said, maybe I'll run into him. And about a mile out of Valmarais, here he was coming back.
Where had he been?
Well, he walked into town to Valmarais there.
Probably got him a motel room.
He might have stayed in a motel, I don't know where he stayed. But Ray had all the money and I didn't have any.
Tell me, that 47 Plymouth you were driving?
Yeah,
Yeah, because y'all picked me up in Texas and drove back with you to California.
yeah.
And that's when I went to live with John.
And we got to, when we got ready to leave Muldoon, it was real hot that day. Ray says, let's go by Flatonia and have a cold beer. I said, okay. Had that cold beer. He said, let's just keep driving to California. Colonel Lois was mad as hell because we left without telling her goodbye.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we got out in New Mexico and had a sandstorm.
No, what happened, the lights went out, and I was driving, and I managed to stop the car. Just, it was a cupboard there and a concrete wall, embankment on this side. I got to stop, and it's dark as pitch, it's about 12 o'clock at night, and I said, the only thing we can do is see if we can find a cigarette pack of Campbell. I'll get the foil out and wrap the fuse and put it back in, and sure enough it worked. I accidentally found an old pack of Campbell laying on the ground.
10 foil, yeah.
Blew it out there for you.
And here it's dark as pitch, and that's the long ways from San Angelo between Del Rio, you know,
Yeah,
or San Antonio, whatever you
San
want to call
Antonio.
it.
Well, does anybody know your father's parents' name?
Grandma Richardson.
His mother was, she was married 3 times.
Yeah.
Really?
First time to a Campbell, and then a Terrell, and then
No,
a
the first
Richardson.
one was Terrell. Aunt Lucy was the oldest. And then it was Campbell, and then it was Richardson.
So did she have children from people other than Campbell? I mean, his brother?
Now, Aunt Lucy was her first marriage, and then
So the
2
5 girls were
brothers
from-
by Campbell, and then Aunt Mary. There are 4 boys and 2 girls by
No, it's 2
Grandpa
boys
Richardson.
and 2 girls. Uncle Aaron and Uncle
No,
J.C.
2 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Aunt
Marilyn
Lady
and
Aunt
Lady.
Ellen.
So Okay, but I'm confused. His mother was Grandma Richardson.
Mhm.
What was her first name?
Happy, Appeline, I guess.
Adeline?
Appeline.
Appeline.
Mhm.
Daughter ain't happy.
Huh. And then his father, any clue
Don't have any idea on that.
what his first name was?
Don't
Y'all
know.
only knew Grandma Richardson?
Oh, yeah. I
Your
lived
grandpa
with them.
Richardson.
Yeah, I lived with them.
But I mean, wasn't she asking you what his name was?
Well, Campbell. See,
Oh,
she
that-
remarried to Richardson, so, but their lineage comes from
Well,
Campbell.
we have to assume
Hey,
that,
Marilyn might know.
Campbell had the name of Carroll, because he was named after both grandpas. So that would have meant Frank Carroll Campbell, and that would assume that that was Daddy's father's name was Carroll Campbell.
That I don't know. My birth certificate says Frank Campbell.
Well, I don't care, you're Frank Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L-L. Yeah,
Right, and then there was Raymond Aubrey, and what's your middle name?
Arthur Lee.
Arthur Lee. Okay, and James, what was his middle name?
Elmer James.
Elmer
Campbell.
James.
John Leroy.
John Leroy.
Raymond Aubrey Campbell.
Okay,
And then we lost Buell Yark Campbell.
you lost,
Buell, B-U-E-L-L, Yark
Is that-
Campbell. He's out there at that Pittman Cemetery.
that was the baby that was,
No, that
No.
was after Raymond.
You know,
I never
he
heard
was,
of him.
died as a baby though.
Yeah, he died.
how did he die?
Probably baby syndrome, they don't know.
Wasn't he
Okay.
about 2 years old, or was he
Yeah.
younger?
Well, no,
About 2 months.
they said he was about 6 weeks old
Yeah.
and didn't have where he could do a bowel movement.
Hmm.
So,
And then Dorothy, your middle name is what?
May.
May.
Yeah,
May.
Spelled M-A-Y, but I changed it to M-A-E.
And Lorraine, how about you?
Laura, my name, first name's Laura.
Laura,
Laura.
after your mother.
Mhm.
So is it Laura Lorraine?
Mhm.
That's pretty. And then Grace is Callie Grace.
And she was named after Grandma Speed. Her name was Caledonia, so they named her Callie. And I don't know where Grace came from.
It'd be nice.
Yeah.
If Grace were here.
Yeah.
Probably fill y'all in on a little few things
Listen,
y'all
she
forget.
can remember things
I
that
know
I
it.
can't.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
She's
don't
always
you have
telling me
a
about when she and
campfire,
Arthur went to
I
those
know, but
dances and
this
saw
brings
John
it all
Wayne
up and you
and you danced with, who was that movie star you danced with?
Betty Grable.
I danced with Betty.
Yeah,
Grable.
Betty Grable. Grace remembers all that. She can tell you all
She
about
danced with
that.
John Wayne, too.
Yeah.
Did she?
What
Wow.
happened on this Betty Grable deal, I was in the real estate business at that time, and I did, my secretary, we went to the Del Mar Hotel, and my boss was coming from Los Angeles with his secretary, and I got there first, we were sitting there having a drink. So finally he come in, and I looked over at the bar, and man, I said the prettiest blonde, and had a split skirt on, and beautiful legs, and old Texas, what the hell is his name?
Harry James.
Harry James was sitting there with his sleeves rolled up. I didn't know who they were. So they said to me, says, why don't you go over and invite them for a drink? So I jumped up and went over and invited them for a drink. They had a drink. Pretty soon somebody said Betty, pretty soon somebody said Harry. I jumped up and went to the bathroom, I was embarrassed. Then we come back, we had a couple of drinks with them, they gave me some racehorses to bet the next day Del Mar was running. So I was going to Del Mar, I went every day anyway. And so I bet their horses, sure enough, they won. And that night, they had a big patio at the hotel. And so I decided to stop there just to see what was going on. And bumped right into her. She said, did you bet the horses? I said, yeah, let's go dance. And the dance floor we went.
Yeah, they own racehorses. They raced up at Golden Gate in San Francisco all the time also, the horses up there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he met old Bing Crosby, too.
Oh, hell, I met a lot of them movie stars. One time, we was out to the camp out of San Diego a little ways, and
Campbell.
he was lost. He had his shirt tail hanging out and his beard, and he was half drunk, and he couldn't hardly talk. He said, how did I get back to Del Mar? So I directed him back to Del Mar. He reached in his pocket, gave me a $20 bill and said, buy the boys a drink.
Well, you know, he married that girl down there in Houston.
Cathy.
And Bill was going with her sister, Bill Chandler, her
Mhm.
cousin lived in the valley, Aunt Jenny's boy. And said he didn't have on his toupee and he was just as commonplace as anything.
Mhm.
You know, never put on airs, was really a nice guy.
You wanna go outside?
Mhm.
You wanna go
Well,
outside?
most of all those movie stars were nice.
Do you wanna go
Old
outside?
Bob Hope, I used to
Well,
tell
get
him, I
Get
said,
over
you old man, get over here and shake hands with me. He said,
Come on,
don't
I'll
call
let
me
you
an
go.
old man, these women won't have nothing to do with me.
He was always sharp.
He was indeed, yeah.
Yeah, you met him in the military, right?
Yeah, Johnston Island.
So, okay, what branch of the military were you in, and you and John and Ray? You were all four in there.
Yeah.
Were-
We had two in the Navy, two in the Marine Corps, and one in the Air Force. I was Air Force, and John and Art was in the Marine Corps, and James and Raymond was in the Navy.
Okay, so James was too. Okay.
Yeah.
All four of them during World War II. And then he, Korean War?
Yeah.
Air Force.
Yep.
And I had, my middle son, Gary, was in the Navy, and then Kent was in the Air Force and Special Services.
Right.
And I have helped put your first men on the moon, been cleared by government security 3 times, so I think we've done our part for this
Yeah.
country.
Impressive.
All did our duty.
Well, and Raymond was close to where Pearl Harbor was bombed at the time, right?
Was
He was
Pearl
there.
Harbor.
Yeah, but I thought he wasn't physically at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. He was out on a boat.
Yeah, but he was in the
He was in the
bay.
harbor.
He was in the harbor.
But he was in the harbor when, okay.
Yeah.
I thought the boat was
Got
out and they
from
were
the
coming
top
back
deck
in.
To the bottom deck, got a black eye.
The ship got hit.
Yeah.
He has a
Okay.
purple
No,
heart, but I
I'll
don't
tell you
know.
what happened to Raymond. It was when we was in the Marshall Islands, and we was making a landing there, and they had the Minneapolis and 3 or 4 destroyers firing on the beach, and one of the Japs had a 77 millimeter that bounced off the tail end of the Minneapolis, and it knocked 2 or 3 of the sailors. I saw it when it happened. I was on another ship just back a little way. Then all of a sudden, these destroyers went just like this, and they knocked that pillbox out. Then the Minneapolis kept firing too, see.
And then after that, he went on to Princeton, and Princeton was hit, and they pulled into the islands over there for repairs. He said he spent about 2 months in, what the heck island was it?
New Caledonia.
New Caledonia, yeah.
Well, I was in the hospital at that time. He came to see me when I was in New Caledonia.
Yeah.
Well, he said he got 10 ships shot out from under him.
No.
No.
What he told me.
Yeah.
Little snip.
What did he get his Purple Heart
Yeah,
from?
he has, I have his purple heart here, but I don't have any other material or anything with it.
Where'd he get it?
Well, he got
Pearl
it
Harbor,
when the Minneapolis got hit.
Yeah,
That's
when
how he
Minneapolis
got it.
was
He
hit,
got
he-
knocked down.
He was knocked down and slightly wounded, and
Well,
Slightly.
that's when he got the black eye,
Yeah.
and went from the top deck to the bottom deck.
and then after that, he was over on Princeton, and Princeton got hit.
Well, he was on USS Ticonderoga too. We visited
Yeah,
that with him
yeah,
out
he
there in
was-
California, that was aircraft
Well,
carrier.
he was on the Boxer. He was on 3 or 4 different aircraft carriers. He was up in Alaska on the Boxer. He was a mail boy up there.
Mailbox.
So the Minneapolis was the one he was on when Pearl Harbor was hit.
Huh?
The Minneapolis is
Yes,
what he was on
it
when
was a
Pearl
heavy
Harbor was
cruiser.
hit.
He was on a heavy cruiser when they got hit.
Okay.
I
Well,
happened
was
to-
it after the war that he stayed in Japan and then married that girl from
Yeah, he
Japan?
was port director at Sasebo for 3 years there at Japan. That's when he met Jeannie and married her.
Well, you know, John was on Iwo Jima, and they wiped out 2 Marine divisions, and
He used to grape old Ray's soul. He'd have to pull his shoes off to go in to visit her.
What happened, how long was he married to her?
Oh, about, I guess, a couple of years.
It was longer
No,
than that
longer than
because
that,
they
yeah.
came
Well,
down.
I mean, when they come back to the States.
Yeah, after they came back.
Did they get divorced or?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She,
Oh, yeah.
she
they
went
got-
back to Japan.
Yeah, Ray was ready to start a family and she was, boy, she got a life of the nightlife and the dances and the parties and that's all she wanted to do and he was ready to settle down.
Yeah.
anyway, talking about John on Iwo Jima, see, he was in the supply, you know, giving out clothes.
When Ray got out of the Navy and come to San Diego, I bought a house for him. I'll tell you how Ray got started. in the real estate business. John and Angie called me and said, Ray got $5,000 in his pocket, said get a hold of him and get some real estate. So I went to Encinitas and bought an acre and a quarter for him, the best view that the ocean had, and it's close to school and close to a lake. We had it 2 years and sold it for $20,000.
My goodness.
He taken that $20,000, went to Oakland and built 2 duplexes. He sold those, he got transferred to Washington DC, and he built 2 more duplexes. Then he come back to San Diego, and I bought a home for him, and he bought about a 15-unit motel. And he run that for about a year. I guess he lived there about a year. Then he got a call to go to Fort Worth as a tech data writer for Bell Telephone. I mean, not Bell Helicopter.
It was Volt Technical that he worked for.
Yeah.
Frank, did you work with him too with that?
Yeah, I did 5 different manuals on the helicopter.
Before he went to Dallas, he came to Houston and worked at NASA. 'Cause see, I was working on the project too, but I didn't know that he was working on it until 5 years later.
Really? Because it was so secret, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah, back then it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell my kids, my husband, nobody. And 5 years later, I found out he was out at NASA, and then he went to Bell Helicopter.
Oh.
In the meantime, while Ray was there in Fort Worth, he bought 50 houses, 1 for each state in the union, from the money that he got out of Washington DC from them duplexes he sold.
Mm-hmm.
He bought 1 at a time until he.
And at one time, he owned over 100 houses in Fort
I
Worth,
don't
quite
know how
several.
many, but I know he told me that he had 1 for every state in the union.
But don't you remember, he also sold flowers off of that acreage? You said you bought him 1.5 acres. He sold flowers off of that for years and made bukus of money off the flowers.
No, we only had it 2 years.
2 years, well, I said,
Well, yeah, we shipped flowers off of it. Most of them were flew to France and Holland. They went by airplane all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We had that lot at Salt and Sea, we only got, what, $500 for that, wasn't it? Well, he sold that.
He sold it.
You know, when he was still doing.
He joined the Navy when he was
got a lot.
16, didn't he?
Yeah, he was right out of high school.
No,
graduated
he
at
didn't
16.
sell that lot. I sold it for him.
Well, whatever, you know, we
I
encouraged him
I
to
had to
start
drive
getting rid
over
of it.
and look at it and locate it and find out where it was. It was in a good location, just right off of the waterfront. And the guy from Los Angeles bought it.
but anyway, what I was gonna tell you about John. First, Arthur said, he wasn't on here with John. I said, oh man, I know he was. So I called Olivia, and she said, oh yeah, but see, he was, you know, giving out supplies. He was, what do you call him? Supply sergeant?
He was supply sergeant.
Yeah, and so Olivia told me, said when they wiped out those 2 Marine divisions, he got his little shovel and he was out there digging him a foxhole.
I'm
By the
sure.
way, Olivia had a message on there, we ought to
Well,
call her and let us.
what
find out
happened?
to her. She called
John,
on
they
the
take
road.
John out of the Department of the Pacific, and he went with an artillery unit, and he landed on Bougainville with the artillery, and of course they're the last ones to come in. The infantry is always ahead of them, and then when they got there on the beach, well, naturally he had to dig a foxhole like the rest of them and sleep on the beach because the advance unit wasn't far enough in for the artillery to move off of the beach.
Wasn't any fun though. Sure wasn't.
No.
All the firepower around him and everything.
What'd you do in the Air Force?
Huh?
What Frank
Well,
did in
let's
the Air
see, I was, went to Fort Francis E. Warren from basic training, and I left Texas, got up there, and when I left Texas, it was 94 degrees, and I got up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, it was 27 degrees, and I was wearing short sleeves, and went out to base, spent time there, went through tech school for MOS for administrative clerk. And then they shipped us overseas, spent a little bit of time in Hawaii, and then went down to Johnston Island, and I was chief clerk of base operations down there. I scheduled all the flights of the pilots to get their flying time in each month.
What island was you on?
Johnston.
Oh, the Johnson Island.
Yeah, I spent 13 months on Johnston Island, and we had 13 suicides for the 13 months I was there.
You mean in the Air Force?
Yeah. We had a
They were
mile, it's a
scared,
half a
huh?
mile, it's a half a mile wide, a mile long, and temperature was typically 115 to 120 every day.
How'd you stand it?
And it was coral, we were 7 feet above sea level, and the runway was the biggest part of it. And when I got there, Colonel Chrono was commanding 367 guys on the island. And when I left, he was commanding over 1,000 because he was trying to make PG, Brigadier General, before he retired. And,
Didn't y'all have a few flights without guns or ammunition?
oh yeah, it's, we were primarily a refueling base. Ships would come in and unload, and then they'd go ahead and would fuel the B-25s and such that was coming through, going on over to the islands.
Because I know when Petey was in the Air Force in Korean War, he said they were flying planes without ammunition. Didn't have enough ammunition.
Yeah, it's, well, we were primarily a refueling base, going on overseas and everything.
So you were in how long? How many years?
It was 3 years and 8 months.
And this was before or after
He
you were
was just a
married?
recruit.
No, I was before.
Before you married.
Yeah, I was 1949. I graduated from high school here, and then I went immediately into the Air Force.
Didn't I give you a pretty good option? I told you was either gonna stay in and get a commission or you're going to college.
Then he came to Houston and went to college.
I had an option on it. At Johnston Island, 80% of the people on Johnston Island volunteered for Korea. Now that's, you know, how bad everybody wanted to get off that island and such, but 80% of the troops volunteered for Korea. And came back to Hawaii, and I spent several months in Hawaii. That was a great tour of duty there and everything, and if they would let me re-up, I would stay in the service. Guaranteed I could stay in Hawaii. But I took, you know, a couple of college courses while I was over there, and got back, and you know, I was offered a warrant officer's, you know, commission and such, but I wasn't old enough to go to OCS before I got out of service, because you had to be 20 and a half to.
Well, we took you to Houston to go to the University of Houston. You didn't go but one term, did you? And then you went in the Air Corps?
No, I
No,
didn't
you
go to
went
college till I got out of
Out,
the
yeah,
Air
when he
Force.
got
I know,
out.
but we took you to Houston to go to the University of Houston. We took you down there when you graduated from high school.
No, you know, I had a couple of scholarships that talked to me at Glenn and over at what's one down at Wharton Junior College and such. But no, I went directly into the Air Force and spent the time, and then I got out and went to the University of Houston and
Yeah, he was
graduated
living
there.
on Austin Street.
And
in
then,
Houston.
yeah.
Did you actually see battle in Korea? Did you go?
No.
You were just in the service during that
Yeah, I
time.
had service.
Do y'all want to call Olivia and talk to her while you're on here? She called today while we were at the reunion.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna head for Austin to get in at a decent time.
All right. Well, we will, I'm gonna come back sometime and I wanna hear some of Art's war stories,
Well, you
cause I
ought
know
to.
he's got some
He
stories.
should write a diary.
Yeah. Well, and
I think
the,
speak into that thing, it'd be better.
you know, the video diaries are great.
Yeah, they are. They're super
Uh,
nice.
Well, you got a lot of
Brian?
history today,
You
Dad.
did
That
that.
was good.
Yeah.
She's
yeah.
got another phone. Why don't two get on the phone and Arthur and I'll get on the phone.